Is it less likely now? What are your thoughts on that?
I a long time ago stopped speaking in black and white terms, and this it isn't true because it's a quick way of making yourself look stupid, right?
Yeah.
Like, there are times when even when I know something and I'm hearing it from within the organization, and I still will couch it with the very very likely. But I look at this situation, I look at the assets they paid, I listen to the words that Dan Campbell told me about how he wants to build a roster, and um, there didn't seem to be much ambiguity there in not wanting to force getting a quarterback. And mind you, this was the day, the morning of Matthew Stafford being traded, so things might change. But I don't see it at 7. I think it's a bad use of resources. I don't know why you would draft a guy that would potentially sit for a season and a half or 2 seasons. You're talking 40% now of that rookie contract when clearly you look at the roster and it's far away. Maybe you can turn things around quickly and be competitive for a playoff spot in a year, but nobody's looking at this roster and saying they're a great offseason away from being a legit Super Bowl contender. And I think that's, to me, the bottom line in that discussion.
Yeah, and I think what also is important there too, Justin. You talk about bottom line. Talk about Jared Goff's contract and the possibility of a restructure and what that could do to the Lions, both short term and long term. Do you think that it's something that the Lions should seriously consider? And do you think that they will?
I keep looking at the math of the situation, and so
Right.
I don't have the table in front of me right now, but let's use a loose cap projection of $185 million, and maybe it's plus or 5 million. But what we know right now with Goff coming in is lines are over the cap, and that's before free agency. That's before you got to squeeze in a number 7 overall draft pick. You got to factor in the whole idea eventually that you got to get a practice squad in there. Like, they've got to trim some serious cap space, and probably in the ballpark of 20 million, maybe more. I don't know. Because you do like to have that rainy day fund, and maybe that's just eliminated in a post pandemic dropped cap year that you just can't create that extra buffer space. But so you look at the options now of how do you create that space, and obviously there's several guys they could cut. They're going to need to replace them, but you can nickel and dime it with Justin Coleman, or Trufant, or Nick Williams, and those three alone. You cut those three, and suddenly you've got somewhere in the ballpark of 15 million you create right there. But the other option teams always have is the contract restructure, the simple restructure. And it's very important that people understand this isn't a pay cut. This isn't Goff coming in and saying I'm going to take less money. You're just giving the money up front and finding a way to spread that cap hit over. It's a super beneficial move for a player because, one, you get cash in hand. Two, it kind of adds some long-term security to your situation wherever you are. So just a rough estimate. I mean, it looks like they could pretty easily create 15, 16 million by restructuring Goff. And the only other real deal they can restructure and create not even that much space, but in that ballpark is Trey Flowers. And I think Goff is more likely. It doesn't really change the outlook too much. I think with the way his cap situation is set up, he's clearly here for 2021. I mean, it's not even a discussion. I know some people have talked about flipping him right away after seeing what Carson Wentz brought, and that's just not the plan here. What it would do is probably lock him in a little bit more guaranteed to a job in year 2. Instead of having 15 million guaranteed and 10 million dead money next year, it would, the dead money would be near or above what his contract would be, or his cap hit would be next year. So you're locking him in at 22. It doesn't mean he's going to be the starter, but I think you reassess that situation after the 2021 season. You see what he produced on the field, whether there's optimism of him being the franchise guy going forth, or you go the Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love route. You draft the guy to sit behind him for that 2022 season, and maybe you make the move mid-season, maybe you make it in 2023, but you're only eating 1 year of a rookie contract then as you're getting that development.
Yeah, and Anthony Lynn said specifically he'd like to see a rookie quarterback sit for a year, so that timeline makes a lot of sense. One thing before we head to our first break, You mentioned the team being up against the cap. What does that mean for free agency? What is a realistic goal for this team in free agency, given that they're so tight against the cap? Is it just like try to find a bunch of cheap 1-2 year deals that can just fill spots, or can they kind of reach out and get a playmaker or two?
I know not many of us are going out to the store in the pandemic, but it's kind of like that DVD bargain bin at Walmart, right?
Yeah.
Where there's 5 for $20. And listen, there's some gems in there, right? Like you might be able to pull out a copy of Tommy Boy for $4. Like nobody's mad about getting a copy of Tommy Boy. I don't know anybody that has physical media anymore, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. I don't see them swinging for the fences. You know, I've got a pre-written offensive preview right now on free agency. I've kind of just started looking at the defensive side, and you know, I guess I could see them maybe taking like one medium-sized swing for a culture guy. Like let's just pretend John Johnson gets to free agency and they don't use the franchise tag. Like you're talking about a safety that's probably in that $10 million a year ballpark, but you could get a first-year cap hit on a guy like that for $3-4 million probably, you know, just the way you structure contracts in the NFL. Like that's the type of guy, like maybe I could see them taking a young guy that can be a culture setter to one of the units. But the more likely option is a lot of bargains, a lot of low cost veterans that can get them through this 21 season without being an embarrassment on the field, but also, kind of fitting that high effort, gritty cultural mode that they're trying to establish under Campbell.
Speaking of Campbell, we're going to talk to Justin about him just when we come back from the break, because Justin has talked to him one-on-one. So stick around on First Bite. We will be right back with Justin Rogers of the Detroit News. All right. I owe an apology to our live audience because I accidentally hit the end stream button somewhere in the middle of that. I think we only missed about 10 seconds, but it is full. I don't think you actually missed anything if you guys were watching. Plus, it all got recorded on our audio. So if you did miss anything, you can check out our audio podcast.
If I was talking, you probably didn't miss anything.
Really quick, I saw a couple things I wanted to talk about in the chat, and now I can't find them. We might just jump right into the next segment. People are liking your mustache, by the way, Ryan. Well done with that.
It was worth it. I've gotten an awful lot of comments about it. But the nice thing about having a mustache during a pandemic is that not too many people really see it.
Yeah. You're wearing a mask all the time.
It's just I'm wearing a mask all day. So unless I'm eating or drinking, you probably don't see it.
Quick
My
on
fiance would definitely say the same thing. So.
Right. LJ, thank you, by the way, for the 15 months subscribed to the channel. Constrictor, 8 months subscribed to the channel now. And D-Man, 3 months, now 2 in a row. There are a couple of people saying that you need to go solo stash now, Justin. I would never.
0% chance.
All right.
I only did it because we were doing that charity drive.
True.
So if it wasn't for that, and if it wasn't for somebody anonymously donating $495 before we signed off.
What's our cursing policy on this podcast?
Go for it.
Wide open.
Like, I've already getting enough shit through Twitter for my hair right now. Like, I'm doing my thing. I'm enjoying it. Like, I started this mess like. I don't know. It was pre-pandemic. Like the pandemic just coincided to help me out here. So, I'm not cutting it. So, sorry guys.
My favorite is the live YouTube chat when they live stream the press conference, and then when the beat writers are asking questions, they're the one that's on screen. And I think I don't remember which press conference it was, but someone was just did a depression bomb go off in the Lions beat writer room or what? With
yes.
yeah, I think the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. I don't think people listen, I have a super cool job. I don't ever want to pretend that I don't. There's so many harder jobs, but it is a job and it is a grind. That 17-week season is a grind, and you're talking 60, 70 hours a week, no days off. The days off, you're traveling a lot, and taking 25 flights during the pandemic, little extra stress. And then you go into usually like the finish line. You get to the finish line and you just kind of like collapse. That's just how it goes every year. Now you go into a GM and coaching search. Like,
Oh,
There's no
gosh.
break. There was
like it's a
no
once
break.
in a decade thing where you're doing the double search. And so and then they decide they're going to trade Matthew Stafford. Just here's your cherry on your Sunday. So yeah, depression might be there. Not going to lie.
And you know what you have to look forward to next year, Justin, is 18 weeks.
You know, I will take an extra regular season game over 4 preseason games, because like 4 preseason games has a way of like wearing you down. Like you get to that 4th week of the preseason and you're trying to come up with story ideas. You're like, I've already written 3 stories on this 3rd string center who I'm never going to think about again. Like you could go back and look at some of the
Leo Colo Montaghi.
Oh man, he looked like Aquaman.
I was gonna say, but then every once in a while you're gifted something like, oh, Kerry Hyder got fined, and he's gonna lose more money than he's gonna make if he doesn't make the 53-man roster, and it's like, yes.
At least he recovered 3 fumbles. That's a preseason record.
All right, let's get back into it. I want to try to get you out here by the top of the hour. We might ruin it a little tad over, but all right, give me a second here, and we'll make a little mark. And we are back with First Bite, here with Justin Rogers of the Detroit News, talking about Jared Goff at the top. Now we're going to get into Dan Campbell. Justin, I just want to kind of ask you a very, very basic question, since you've had a one-on-one conversation with him, albeit over the phone or Zoom or whatever it was. What were your just kind of first impressions of the guy? I mean, we've been dealing with Matt Patricia for 3 years, and Dan Campbell certainly seems very different in a lot of ways. So what were your kind of first impressions just having that chat with him?
Yeah, Matt Patricia, the public-facing Matt Patricia and the behind-the-scenes Matt Patricia were 2 different guys. Yeah. Campbell is more consistent, and really, Patricia was pretty easygoing and interesting when the cameras weren't rolling. But I wish I could remember who it was. At some point this offseason, they were talking about learning players' superpowers, like in the scouting process. And I don't know if this was a on the record or off the record conversation, so it might be throwing out something that I'm not supposed to, but they were talking about scouting players and finding their superpower, right? And I watched Campbell, and clearly, like, the guy's superpower is charisma and conversation. Like, he's the guy that you get sat next to on a plane going cross country, and you end up talking for 4 hours, and it's not annoying, it's genuine, it's his enthusiasm and passion shine through. And I during that one-on-one conversation, that's when I learned he was doing some of the like calls, like one-on-one Zoom calls with season ticket holders. And like, that's, to me, like, that's an awkward thing, right? And yet he's so perfect for it. He's so natural for dealing with people, and it's people of all walks of life. I mean, I really get the sense that he is authentic and genuine and just a good people person. And that is, to me, his superpower here.
Was there anything that you came across with your conversation with him that was maybe surprising to you, or maybe would surprise Lions fans, given, I mean, the whole meathead thing going around? Was there anything that maybe was counter to that?
Like, the meathead thing is so silly. Like, you can embrace it, but like he also knows, like, it's not true. I think that's why he embraces it. Like, you can be a total meathead about football and still be smart and charismatic, and you can be all of those things. I think probably the thing that surprised me the most is, as I'm kind of filtering through my list of questions and getting in as many as I possibly can in a half hour, because it's never enough time, right? Was sometimes how detailed he was on the record. And I think the one that really caught me off guard and was just so I guess helpful was when I asked about, the defensive scheme, and I really expected this nothing answer because, he had said so often during his introductory press conference, like how, I guess, little he emphasized scheme, and,
Right.
and it was more about personnel. And so I thought I was expecting some kind of generic cliche answer. And no, he goes in, he starts dropping split safety and Saint coverage concepts and under 3-4 fronts. And I was like, what is happening right now? Like I'm trying to process it to ask follow-ups, and it was like such a information bomb that I wasn't expecting, that it caught me off guard. But it was nice, like it gave me hope for going forward. Because at the end of the day, like when I ask a question, all I want is a good answer, because I'm asking the question not for me, but for the fans. Like that's my job, is to give fans good information to answer the questions they care about, good or bad. And when you ask that question, because so many people are asking, are they switching to the 3-4 or to the 4-3 or keeping the 3-4? Like, it's not the most pressing thing of the offseason, but it was a question a lot of people were asking. I asked it and got a very meaningful response to answer that question for fans. And that's what I want to do in my job.
And, correct me if I'm wrong, Justin, but it seems like Dan Campbell's the kind of guy that if he does have the time, that he would get into like any follow-up questions you might have about split safety this, or, nose tackle that. Like, it seems like he's just like you said, a very genuine guy. So my follow-up to that, and I'm glad that you touched on the defense. What about the relationship do you think is going to be so beneficial between him and Aaron Glenn? Like, I mean, for me personally, I think the Aaron Glenn hire was something that really captured my attention and really set off like, hey, you know what? I'm a lot more comfortable with this hire now of this guy with, some head coaching experience, but that was kind of the concern. What about the Aaron Glenn hire what introduces that dynamic? What intrigues you about that?
Yeah, I didn't know a whole lot about Aaron Glenn, beyond his playing days, maybe before, kind of researching potential coordinators the days before that hire was made. Lost that article because Campbell got a itchy trigger finger before I could publish it. But the first thing that stands out to you is you look at the numbers of that Saints secondary and how quickly they improved. I remember there was a season where the Lions secondary was awful, like just awful in terms of like passer rating against. That's probably a lot of seasons.
Yeah, I was going to say this season.
Somehow like the Saints were below them, and they might even been like the worst secondary in NFL history in terms of passer rating against at the time. And whatever, that's the era, but still, like, it stood out. And I think that was the year before Glenn came in. And they were, a little shaky that first year, and then they just really took off. And yeah, they got some good pieces in there, but you can get good pieces and still not see success. And so when we talked to him for the first time, I don't, all the days blend together. It was last week, 2 weeks ago, I don't know. You could see why people peg him as a future head coach. Like, just the way he presents himself, the way he answers questions, the enthusiasm, the clearly the depth of knowledge. And I had asked Campbell just about all the former players he was adding to his staff, because that was another question. Like, a lot of us were, I don't know, I wouldn't even deny like it wasn't a point of comedy at some point, right? Like, it was like Patricia with the Syracuse guys, right? Like, it just got to be like so over the top. But he said these are guys that were super established in the league, and none more than Glenn, 15 years and all pro seasons and first round draft picks, who willingly went back to the bottom of the ladder because they loved it. And he said Aaron Glenn was the guy getting coffee and picking guys up from airports when he started it in New Orleans. And he worked his way up. And, you have to believe that even if the Lions defense has a modicum of success, like a middle of the road unit in 2 years, like, this guy might get poached.
Yeah, that's something we talked about, and I think some Lions fans are already nervous about that sort of thing. But but
they'll like that third round draft pick to come back with it now too.
Yeah, there's that, and like, when's the last time the Lions have had that problem, that their coaching staff is so good that it's getting poached? Like,
Yeah, like there was
doesn't happen.
talk of it after like 2015, 14, Terrell Austin and the early hype train with Jim Bob Cooter.
Right.
Which derailed and went off a bridge at some point.
Still have that shirt. Really
You
quickly, want to go back to the defense because based on your conversation with him, it sounds like he wants a defensive front like the Rams and a backfield like the Saints, which, okay, sure, yeah, let's just have Aaron Donald and one of the best secondaries in the league. Is there more to it than that? Like, schematically, what does that actually look like? Because it sounds easy to say, yeah, let me just have one of the best defensive fronts, one of the best secondaries.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the secondary. The Lions ran a ton of cover 3 and cover 1, a lot of man coverage. It obviously became a talking point as people were frustrated and trying to figure out what could be done to fix that group. Now you're going to be looking at more cover 2 and quarters, and something I always go back to with the quarters defense, which has become increasingly popular in as the spread offensive concepts reach out. But every once in a while, like I'll ask a guy in like the locker room, like Mike Ford or Glover Quinn, like, what's your favorite coverage? And most cornerbacks will tell you man coverage. Like, they want to be in man all day long. And Glover, who's one of the guys that I respect the most out of anybody I've ever covered because of how thoughtful his answers were. And he seemed really taken aback by the coverage question, and he thought about it. And I don't even think he got back to me immediately. I think he came back to me like a week later, and he said, I really love quarters. And I'm thinking, okay, if one of the best free safeties, most instinctual safeties in the NFL likes quarters, there's got to be a reason for it. And I like the way it protects the deep ball. It doesn't put too much of a strain on the outside corners. It gives a nice bit of overlap and in coverage help. And yeah, you're going to need some better underneath defenders. Like, yeah. But I like the idea of getting Tracy Walker back in a deep safety role. Now you're going to potentially have and likely have 2 on most plays. Arguably that's Will Harris's best role too if he ever puts it together. Okudah, it's going to give him a little bit more or take a little bit off of his plate in terms of the stress that was put on him last season. So, that's the part I'm interested in the most. The defensive front. Yeah, you don't have Aaron Donald, and
Thanks for reminding us.
Yeah, they had a chance at him. That's right. Hey, I mocked him. I mocked him to you guys, so I take 0% of the blame.
Justin did everything he could, man.
I tried. Martin just ignored my text. Like that's a once in a generational player. So like you're not going to find that guy, but they have to find some kind of interior pass rush because it's not Nick Williams, it's not Danny Shelton, it's definitely not John Pennicini. Like, it just that's not a guy that's going to be setting up shop in the backfield. It like maybe the only guy on the roster you could say kind of has a little bit of that skill set is Deshaun Hand, and he's hurt. He's always hurt. He's had major durability issues. No fault of his own, but that's just the reality of it. So they've got to find that interior presence because, they need some edge rushing help too, but Trey Flowers, and if you can retain Okwara, like that's a decent amount of pressure you're going to get off the edge. You need to round it out with interior pressure. That's going to increase the sacks on the outside as well.
Yeah, no amount of John Pennicini penetration jokes will make him a good pass rusher.
I totally checked it at the door.
You walked around it. I had to take it. Justin, we took more of your time than we allotted, so I appreciate you sticking around. Let me give you the floor to promote whatever you got, maybe tease some things coming up at the Detroit News, Twitter handle, all that fun stuff.
Oh, I don't do any of that stuff. If you don't know where I'm on Twitter now, then I'm sorry. Like, you probably shouldn't be on social media. Yeah, and I still work for the Detroit News, so you could probably find them too with Google. Just Google everything.
That'll work.
Yeah.
Justin, thanks again for joining us. I do appreciate you making some time out in finally some breaking in work for you, and hopefully you find some time to relax a little bit, as we're all trying to do. And I appreciate you for listening, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. We'll have our main POD cast on Monday night live here on Twitch and YouTube. But until then, it's chaos.